citizens what the filing process is through your office?
Well, it's really pretty basic and pretty simple. They can file either for a corporation, some file for partnerships, that's not that often, an LLC, limited liability company. Those are the main types of business entities that are registered or filed with the Office of the Secretary of State. We don't make any judgment call on what's included in their paperwork. If they meet certain basic requirements like names of incorporators and address of a service agent and these kinds of things, then our office will file it and issue a certificate and send it back to them.
But anytime they go shop somewhere, any time they go eat somewhere, anytime they go partake in a bowling center, that sort of thing, any of businesses of all those kinds have come through and filed this paperwork, is that correct?
No, not necessarily. There's basically 4 types of business entities. One would be an individual proprietorship, and that could be just an individual who decides to open that restaurant in their in that office space that they rented. They will not have. They will have to still obtain a sales tax permit through the Oklahoma Tax Commission, but as far as anything filed with the Secretary of State's office, that would not necessarily be required. Most businesses that have any kind of investors, any kind of capital requirements of any nature will do the corporation or the LLC. And then after that, they can make the determination with their accountant as to if the corporation is what's called a subchapter S corporation, which then the taxation is like an individual taxation rather than having corporate tax and then also taxes of the investors.
Well, retaining some of that limited liability in that case, is that correct?
Right, in corporations. And the limited liability companies, I forget how long it's been. It's a relatively recent phenomenon here in Oklahoma, probably 20 years, maybe 25, and they it kind of took the best of both the corporate world and the partnership world, because in the limited liability company, it's mostly treated like a partnership, but partners don't have limited tort liability. So in an LLC, they do have limited liability from any torts that the company may have committed.
Since the election, and it looked like, as far as data points, I had 4,000 something entries in the spreadsheet that I received. Is that you guys process a lot, get a lot of these? It's a heavy volume operation, it sounds like you guys have going on. Is that correct?
Yes, and that is a tribute to our employees who did a great job of filing these entities and keeping on top of them. But the real test, I think, that you may have been looking for is in a year earlier, what's the average that you would have in a July and in June to July. And I asked, since I was told that you were making these inquiries, I asked them to pull that up, and apparently 3,123 is how many an average July would have. And as you mentioned, 4,085 was what the same time period a year later. So it'd be a natural deduction to say that upwards of 900 during that period of time could well be related to this marijuana issue. It's not necessarily that all of them are, but it gives you something to compare it to. And I'm not aware of and can't think of off the top of my head. Since you're the business editor, you may, but I can't think of why there'd be a rush in July to do new filings except this. So it's a legitimate deduction to say that a lot of these probably relate to the marijuana issue. Correct.
Can you explain some of those limitations to why that number might not be?
Well, I mean, like I said, to really do a really good analysis, you probably ought to go back a number of years to get you a better baseline. Certainly, there may well be other factors out there that we're not aware of that could have bumped it up. It's not our normal process to have our staff look at the names or what the corporations or LLCs are about because that's not really our business. Our business is to make sure that their filings are properly filed and registered with the state of Oklahoma.
So let's say the company is Marijuana LLC. We'll just make something up here. Just filing under that name doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to be anything to do with that business. They just may like the sound of that name, or even they don't have to disclose that. Okay, yes, I'm going to be buying and selling marijuana, or I'm going to be baking cakes. Right?
Well, that does have in the corporate paperwork. It does indicate usually what is the purpose of the business. Most people go ahead and make that a very general statement to give them a lot of leeway in it. But you're right, the name itself, it does not limit what a person can use that business, use it for. I think, ironically, how many people are going to put the name marijuana in something that's not marijuana related? Because there's still quite a few people who don't think much of that, product, and they might lose business by doing that. Well, on the other side, they might gain some business. So apparently 57% of the voters thought it was just fine.
Is it often that these companies and LLCs and corporations file and nothing ever comes of that? They don't progress beyond that? They may be filed and
Oh, sure. That happens quite a bit. People, it is so easy to file the paperwork nowadays that it's not a huge investment either in the cost of filing or in the putting the paperwork together. Most people can still go online, frankly, and find the forms and fill them out themselves. They're not required to pay an attorney to do that as in years past. So there are a lot of them that never come to fruition.
There will be 140 new stores. It could be, again, some of those may not come to fruition, but also that some of those filings could end up being a business that opens 4 storefronts or 6 storefronts, or am I understanding that correctly?
Oh, sure, yeah. And that depends on what the final rules that come out of the health department indicate in that arena. But you got to also remember, if I remember correctly, that there's multiple levels of businesses in that. There's growers, there's dispensers, there's transportation. There's multiple levels of even licensing, and so that that could be any one of those levels that they are wanting to use that new corporate name for. But like I said earlier, it's not that big a deal for people to come in and do it now. They haven't lost anything if they go out and file a new corporation now, a new LLC now, because nothing is really started yet until these rules are finally passed, and the health department gets the people licensed, and there's a demand for the product, and you got multiple steps still needing to occur.
that sort of thing.
Anything certainly related to health or safety is going to be licensed by the health department, and usually both the state and city county. They'll also, if they're getting ready to try to serve alcohol, they'll be licensed by the Able Commission. So this is only the first step for them, and so they'll have to get a tax commission license so that they can report their sales, and this is the first step. But entrepreneurs will do what it takes to get things up and running, because that's what they're wanting to make money on the process as soon as possible.